Welcome back to another episode of Little Women's History, where I'm introducing you to super interesting women in history that have already been famous or have been forgotten or just didn't, receive the recognition that they deserve, or other interesting topics that concern women throughout history. So I hope you stay tuned, because today I'm going to introduce you to one of the most interesting women of the 20th century, at least in my opinion, and that is Lee Miller. She was a war photographer, model, and just overall interesting female character. And later on, when she retired to the English countryside, she even learned how to cook super exotic dishes and was surprising her guests with all kinds of exotic, rather bizarre dishes. And I just really think it's so fascinating to dive into a character that has been so passionate about all the things that she tackled in life. So I was first introduced to Lee Miller in my history class on the Russian Revolution in 1917, and you might be wondering, what does Lee Miller have to do with the Russian Revolution? You're right, she doesn't have to do anything with that, but one of the senior citizens who was allowed to join the course found out about my dream to become a war photographer, and he handed me this newspaper article about female war photographers, including Lee Miller, whose photograph that is now very iconic was on the head picture. So yeah, that's how I first read about her, and as soon as I read the first words about her life and her legacy, I knew I had to learn more, and I was not disappointed. She lived in New York, Paris, Egypt, experienced London through the Blitz, and later retired to the English countryside, and she had really this extraordinary life. And even a few years ago I saw an exhibition of her work and those of other female war photographers in the Musée de la Libération in Paris, and I just thought it was so amazing that the museum showcased their work and gave them the spotlight that they deserved. And I feel like it doesn't happen that much that the work of women is highlighted or even just receiving the recognition that it deserves. So I thought that was a very fascinating exhibition, and I think honestly you can debate about it if you like, but I just feel like women don't receive the credit that they deserve, even though their work is equally as good as those of men, and sometimes even better. At the beginning of the year, I read her biography that was written by her son Antony Penrose, and I just got so much more intrigued, and just to understand, her past and where she came from and what shaped her as a person was so interesting. And she was this brave adventurer and traveler, and I feel like I could really identify with that, because I'm also so intrigued by traveling, understanding new cultures, and not just going to go sightseeing when I go to places, but to actually understand how the locals live and capture that. And so I was captivated, and when I learned that she grew up in Poughkeepsie, which is only like an hour away from where I live now, I knew I had to go. And I was doing some research to see if there was like a museum or anything else in her honor in the town. There wasn't, not surprising, but her house, the house that she grew up in, is still there, and somebody lives there right now, so you can't go inside because obviously it's not a museum, it's someone's home. But just to see the town where she grew up and like walk down the streets and see the exterior of the house was just super interesting. And even when you go on Zillow, you see that it's mentioned at least that this is the house where she grew up in. So yeah, I would like to show that to you if you want to stay tuned. And then I will also quote something from a newspaper in 1932 from Poughkeepsie that interviewed her at the time, which is also very interesting to hear something in her words that she said in the newspaper and understand more about her character. So stay tuned. I'm very excited because today I'm here in front of Lee Miller's house, the house where she spent her childhood, where she learned photography, where her father Theodore used her as a model to pose in front of his lens. And yeah, it's really interesting just to see where she grew up and where she spent her childhood, because where you grow up and how you grow up has such a big impact on the person you're going to become later on in life and how everything will turn out. Even though we can't go inside, obviously people are living here nowadays, it's still pretty cool to see the external of the house and the neighborhood. And even though you can see the beauty of the houses around, you can also tell nowadays the neighborhood is a little bit rough, and it's still pretty cool to just be here and to see, yeah, as I said, to see where she grew up and spent her childhood. In that interview from 1932 that she did with the Poughkeepsie Evening Star, she said that photography was perfectly suited to women as a profession. It seems to me that women have a bigger chance at success in photography than men. Women are quicker and more adaptable than men, and I think they have an intuition that helps them understand personalities more quickly than men. And I'm thinking about that a lot, and I feel like, you know, she has a point, and I know this can be argued, and I would also love to hear if you might see it a little differently, but I think, yeah, there's something to think about and to take away from her in her own words, and not just something that, you know, a historian wrote about her later in life and just interpreted what she said. But yeah, very, very inspiring woman, and I think more people should know about her, and I think they will, especially with the movie that just came out with Kate Winslet portraying Lee Miller. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that episode, and that I will see you next time for another interesting female character.